My name is Lenora P. Toledo, and I was 30 years old when my boyfriend laughed and said, "Try not to embarrass me while I'm gone. I already told the guys well, you." So I took his advice literally. I erased myself from the picture. The suitcase lay open across our bed like a promise. 7 days in Belize. I had spent nearly a year saving for the trip, setting aside part of every paycheck and researching quiet beaches, authentic restaurants, and snorkeling tours that respected the coral reefs. This trip was supposed to be our reset. I packed Mason's favorite linen shirt, the novel he had mentioned wanting, reef-safe sunscreen, and the swim trunks he always forgot until the last minute. The apartment smelled of lemon cleaner and anticipation. A bottle of his favorite Sauvignon Blanc chilled in the refrigerator, beside 2 glasses for the toast I imagined we would share before our flight. At 7:15 that evening, the front door opened. Mason walked in wearing fitted black jeans, an expensive shirt, and enough cologne to announce him before he entered the room. He was already dressed for a weekend out with his friends, Blake and Connor. "Big night?" I asked, pre-gaming at Connor's new place. He dropped his keys beside the 2 untouched wine glasses and glanced toward the suitcase. "You're packing already?" "We leave in 36 hours. I know. You just take everything so seriously." I ignored the faint sting. "Want to see the itinerary? I managed to reserve the private cabana you wanted." "Later," he said, scrolling through his phone. "I trust you." It should have sounded affectionate. Instead, it sounded like he had assigned me another chore. "Are you excited?" I asked. "For Belize?" He finally looked at me. "It'll be a vibe, I guess." "A vibe?" "Sun, beach, drinks, can't complain." I stared at him. "We're staying in a treehouse suite over the water. You said that was your dream." "I know." He sighed as though my enthusiasm exhausted him. Then, while adjusting his watch, he said, "Just try not to embarrass me while I'm gone this weekend, okay?" The room seemed to narrow around us. "How would I embarrass you?" "You know, don't post those cooking videos or tag me in weird memes. Just stay invisible online for a couple of days." "Why?" Mason gave a short laugh. "I already told the guys well, you." The words landed softly but cut deeply. "What does that mean?" He rolled his eyes. "Don't become sensitive." I asked what it means. "Blake's girlfriend is a successful DJ with a real following. Connor is dating a signed model. They operate on a different level." "And I don't?" "You're sweet, reliable, but you try too hard, Lenora." I thought of the months spent planning Belize, the spreadsheet of restaurants, the private cabana, the clean apartment and chilled wine. Mason continued, "You drive a practical car. You post homemade pasta and hiking pictures. They wouldn't understand." "Understand what?" He looked at me as though the answer should have been obvious. "Why I'm with you." 5 years collapsed into that moment. Every party I had collected him from when he drank too much. Every bill I covered while he changed careers. Every event where I stayed home because he said his friends preferred keeping the group small. I had believed I was his partner. To Mason, I was an embarrassing category he had to explain. He checked the time. "Can we not turn this into a fight? I'm already late." I looked at him standing beside the suitcase containing the future I had carefully planned for us. Then something inside me became completely calm. "Okay." Mason paused. "Okay? Have fun with your friends." Relief spread across his face. He kissed my cheek without warmth. "Thanks. Don't wait up." The door closed behind him. I stood alone in the spotless apartment, listening to the silence. Then I opened the suitcase again. Not to finish packing for Belize, to pack myself out of Mason's life. For several seconds, I remained beside the bed, staring at the half-packed suitcase. The silence Mason left behind did not feel empty. It felt clean. I removed the linen shirt, the novel, and the swim trunks I had packed for him. Then I opened my closet and began placing my own clothes inside. Not frantically, not angrily, carefully. Work clothes first. Sweaters. Shoes. My passport and important documents from the fireproof box. The suitcase meant for Belize became the container for the only journey that mattered now. Out of Mason's apartment. Out of his private embarrassment. Out of a 5-year relationship where I had confused tolerance with love. I packed my books into boxes, wrapping the heavier ones in towels. I removed the French press from the kitchen, the chef's knife I bought, and the framed maps from the hallway. On the living room shelf stood a photograph from a hiking trip in Colorado. I was smiling into the sun. Mason stood beside me, looking toward his phone. At the time, I had assumed he was distracted. Now I wondered whether he had always been somewhere else. I placed the photograph face down inside the box. Halfway through packing, I opened the airline application. 2 seats waited under our names. Belize. 7 days. A non-refundable fare. The screen asked whether I was sure I wanted to cancel. I thought of the money. Nearly $1,500 lost. Then I remembered Mason saying his friends would not understand why he was with me. I pressed confirm. The cancellation email arrived immediately. Next came the resort, the treehouse suite, the private cabana, the snorkeling tour. One by one, I canceled everything. The money hurt, but remaining with someone ashamed of me would have cost far more. By 2 in the morning, my car was packed. I left behind the furniture we had purchased together. The oversized couch Mason chose. The abstract painting that always gave me a headache. The expensive glass table he liked because it looked impressive in photographs. I did not want any part of the life he had designed for appearances. In the kitchen, the bottle of Sauvignon Blanc still waited in the refrigerator. I left it there. Let him find the untouched toast. Let him understand what he had poisoned before it was opened. I removed my key from the ring and placed it on the spotless counter. Beside it, I left 1 sheet of paper. 5 words. No embarrassment. Problem solved. I did not sign it. Mason would understand. I drove to a motel near the highway and slept for 5 hours without dreaming. When I woke, my body felt strangely light. My phone displayed a weather notification for Belize. Sunny. 87 degrees. I deleted it. Then I changed Mason's contact name. The red heart beside it disappeared. At 10:17 a.m., his first message arrived. Where are you? Did you go for coffee? 20 minutes later. Lenora, where is all your stuff? I ate breakfast in a diner while rain ran down the windows. The calls began shortly after noon. On the third voicemail, Mason's voice shifted between irritation and panic. Did you leave because of last night? Seriously? You are so sensitive. It was a joke. Call me back. We need to talk about Belize. The airline says the tickets were canceled. No apology, only anger over the inconvenience. More messages followed. You canceled a non-refundable trip? Fine, you made your point. Come back so we can talk like adults. What does your note mean? I am not a problem. Then, hours later, please text me, I am worried. He was not worried about me. He was worried that the woman who planned everything had finally stopped planning around him. I blocked his number. 2 days later, an old college friend named Benjamin contacted me. Are you and Mason okay? His group chat is exploding. We are no longer together. Benjamin replied almost immediately. Mason told everyone you had some kind of breakdown, but one of Connor's friends says Mason has called you embarrassing for months. Apparently, he planned to enjoy Belize, then decide whether to upgrade afterward. I stared at the message. He had planned to leave after the vacation I funded. Then Benjamin sent another. The strange part is, Blake and Connor are not taking his side. They think your note was brutal. They keep asking what Mason did to make someone disappear that cleanly. The narrative Mason had carefully constructed was collapsing. I had not embarrassed him. He had embarrassed himself. A week later, a new number left a voicemail. Mason's voice was thick with tears. The guys are treating me differently. They keep talking about your note. They think I am some horrible person. You need to explain what happened. Tell them it was not that bad. Please, Lenora. You cannot leave me to deal with this alone. There it was. Not I miss you. Not I am sorry. He wanted me to repair his reputation. The same reputation he had protected by asking me to become invisible. I listened once. Then I deleted the voicemail. Mason had wanted less of me. Now he had none. Mason's attempts did not stop with the voicemail. They evolved. At first, he tried apology, then negotiation, then anger. His brother Lucas called me while I was assembling a bookshelf in my new apartment. Lenora, this has gone far enough, he said. Mason is falling apart. At least let him apologize properly. This is between Mason and me. He says you disappeared without giving him a chance. He had 5 years. Lucas exhaled sharply. You are hurting him. No, I replied, sliding one shelf into place. He hurt himself. I simply stopped watching. I ended the call and blocked his number. The next message from Mason came through another unfamiliar number. It was long and carefully written. He claimed therapy had helped him understand that he used me to feel superior. He admitted that he had mocked my interests because he was insecure about his own life. He called himself the embarrassing one. For a moment, the words almost sounded sincere. Then I reached the final paragraph. I need to see you. You owe me one conversation so I can explain. There it was. Even his apology ended as a demand. I deleted it. The next message arrived 2 days later. You are a coward. Then another. You are punishing me because you cannot handle honesty. Then, you think leaving without a conversation makes you powerful? It makes you pathetic. I read the last one while sitting on my small balcony with a glass of wine. The skyline glowed beyond the railing, and for the first time in years, nobody inside the apartment was criticizing my music, my books, or the way I spent an evening. Mason's words felt distant, like insects tapping against glass, annoying but unable to reach me. Several months later, an invitation arrived for the wedding of our mutual friends, Julia and Amir. The ceremony would take place in a modern art gallery filled with concrete walls, glass ceilings, and carefully arranged black and white photography. I knew Mason would probably attend. For a moment, I considered declining. Then I realized avoiding the wedding would mean he still controlled where I felt comfortable. So I accepted. I went alone, not because I lacked options, because I no longer needed another person beside me to prove I was complete. I wore a simple navy dress and arrived early. Old friends greeted me carefully, uncertain how much I knew about the stories Mason had spread. How have you been? They asked. Really well. It was not performance, I meant it. During the cocktail hour, I saw Mason standing near Blake and Connor. The dynamic had changed. He still looked polished, but there was desperation beneath it. Blake barely acknowledged him. Connor turned away while Mason spoke. Then Mason saw me. His expression froze. A few minutes later, I entered a smaller gallery to study a photograph of an empty pier disappearing into fog. Mason appeared beside me. Lenora. I turned. Mason? You look different. Do I? Can we talk? For 5 minutes. Hope flickered across his face. We moved toward a quiet alcove. Mason took a breath. I have been in therapy for 8 weeks. I waited. I realized how cruel I was. I used you as a target because I wanted to impress people who did not even care about me. I made you feel small because I was insecure. A tear formed in his eye. I was the embarrassing one. The words were correct, but they sounded rehearsed. He continued, "That note destroyed me, but it also woke me up." He paused, expecting comfort. I gave him none. "I am glad you are gaining clarity," I said. His shoulders relaxed slightly. Then I continued, "For what it is worth, taking your advice that night was the best decision I ever made." My advice? Yes. You told me not to embarrass you and not to try so hard. Confusion crossed his face. You were right. I was trying too hard for someone who did not respect me. So I stopped. The color drained from his cheeks. You wanted less of me. Now you have none of me. His sadness hardened. So that is it? After 5 years? Yes. I apologized. You apologized because your friends stopped admiring you. That is not fair. It is factual. Mason stared at me. I am trying to become better. I hope you do. For us. No, do it for yourself. His voice dropped. You really feel nothing? I looked at him honestly. I feel grateful. For what? For finally knowing when to leave. Across the room, Julia waved for me to join the dinner tables. I gave Mason a polite nod. I hope you find what you are looking for. Then I walked away. Later that evening, an unknown number sent one final message. I really mean nothing to you now, do I? I read it once. Then I cleared the notification. The silence Mason once called embarrassing had become the answer he could no longer argue with. I never saw Mason again after Julia and Amir's wedding. Occasionally, a mutual friend mentioned that he had moved to another city or started dating someone from a local band. The updates felt like distant traffic from a road I no longer traveled. I did not ask questions. I did not search his name. The note I had left behind became something of a legend in that old social circle. No embarrassment. Problem solved. People used the phrase whenever someone ended a toxic relationship cleanly. At first, I found that strange. The most private act of dignity in my life had become a joke shared over drinks. Then I stopped caring. The note had never been written for them. It was written for the woman I had become in the moment I finally understood that love without respect was only another form of humiliation. 6 months after the wedding, I met Adrian Hayes. He was a landscape architect with soil beneath his fingernails, an old truck filled with gardening tools, and no interest in pretending his life was more glamorous than it was. We met at a community design event where he was presenting plans for a public garden. I asked one question about native plants. We talked for an hour. Our first date was pizza at a quiet restaurant. Our second was a walk through a botanical park, where Adrian stopped every few minutes to explain why certain trees survive drought better than others. He did not mock my enthusiasm. He matched it. On our third date, I told him about Mason. Not every message or insult, just the truth. I explained the Belize trip, the comment about embarrassing him, the canceled reservations, and the note. Adrian listened without interrupting. When I finished, he leaned back and shook his head. His loss. Then he smiled. And what does, well, you even mean? I laughed softly. I never figured that out. You are simply you, he said. And you seem pretty remarkable to me. There was no dramatic declaration, no attempt to rescue me, only recognition. That was what I had spent years asking Mason for without knowing how to name it. Adrian met my friends openly. He introduced me to his family without hesitation. When he posted photographs, I was not cropped from the frame. When I cooked something complicated and filmed the process, he appeared in the background stealing food from the cutting board. He never asked me to become smaller so he could feel larger. Months later, we were in my apartment preparing dinner. My apartment. My books filled the shelves. Old engineering prints and maps covered the walls. The furniture was simple, chosen because I liked it rather than because it looked impressive in photographs. Adrian stood on the balcony repotting a fern he had rescued from a neglected office lobby. Music played softly from the kitchen speaker. The setting sun filled the room with warm gold. My phone lit up on the counter. An unfamiliar number. The message read, "I'm in town for one night, staying at the Chancellor. I know I do not deserve it, but I would give anything for 15 minutes. Just closure. Mason." For several seconds, I looked at the words. Once, his name could change the temperature of an entire room. Now it felt like a label beneath an artifact in a museum. Evidence of a life that had existed, but no longer belonged to me. Adrian stepped inside, brushing soil from his hands. Something wrong? I looked at him. No. I deleted the message. I did not block the number. I did not compose a final reply designed to wound Mason or prove that I had won. There was nothing left to prove. I placed the phone face down. "Dinner is ready," I said. Adrian glanced toward the stove. "Smells amazing." I walked over and kissed his temple. Mason had asked for closure as though it were something I still owed him. But closure had happened the night I packed my life into the suitcase meant for Belize. It happened when I left the key on the counter. It happened when I stopped arguing with someone determined to misunderstand my worth. I did not need one final conversation. Mason wanted less of me. He received exactly what he asked for. None. For years, I believed that trying harder could make someone appreciate me. I planned better trips, cleaned more carefully, loved more patiently, and made myself useful enough to overlook. But respect cannot be earned through exhaustion. Someone either sees your humanity or treats your devotion like a service. I am Lenora P. Toledo. I am practical, thoughtful, enthusiastic, and sometimes embarrassingly excited about food, books, and carefully planned vacations. I am, as Mason once said, well, me. And in the right life, with the right people, that has always been more than enough.